Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to, well, for the last time, be able to report on something that is breaking news midweek before I go full-time at the end of the year and discuss Boris Johnson's effectively fourth victory in getting the opposition to support him, just as Theresa May managed to do at the start of the Brexit process with his coveted December election. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So the week began with the Liberal Democrats and SNP deciding to back a general election in December as Boris Johnson wanted, though not necessarily on exactly the same terms as Boris Johnson wanted, but it was almost exactly the same. Labour had been resisting this, nominally to show preference for a people's vote first, but without full support from Corbyn. Really, we're talking for party political purposes, keeping Johnson impotent and trapped in number 10, essentially. But a shadow cabinet meeting of senior Labour MPs today was reportedly split on the issue. Some were wanting to maintain the line of no general election this year, but others feared that if it was going to happen anyway, and with the Lib Dems and the SNP voting with the Conservatives, with a bill that just says, can we have a general election on the 12th of December, which is what's being proposed, that would go through even if Labour opposed it. And it wouldn't help Labour's campaign to be seen to be resisting it. Better to back it and then be able to sound optimistic about the chances of winning in the general election campaign itself. And so that's the position that has prevailed. Labour have now been bounced into supporting a general election which, although might not meet anyone's objectives, has a better chance of returning a Conservative government than not. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a risk for Boris Johnson as well. There have been reports of nervousness on his part about the prospect for this election. But in his case, what has he got to lose? He's currently a Prime Minister without the power to pass primary legislation. For a narcissist like him, this is terrible. He wants to imagine himself as being this great leader, but reality keeps biting him on the arse. There is a chance that he could gain a majority. It seems a slender one at the moment, but there is that chance. So, of course, he's going to go for it. Boris Johnson is risking much less than the opposition parties with this. The opposition parties could actually control Parliament if only they'd work together. So this is a Boris Johnson victory. Despite any private misgivings he may have, the guy who looks destined to become the shortest serving Prime Minister and the only one to have never won a vote in Parliament, well, that doesn't look like that's going to happen now. And not due to any brilliant strategic plans on his part or the part of his advisors, but just down to a dumb and dumber contest where his opponents were the dumber. To be fair, Labour have said that they will push for the inclusion of a few amendments, including voting age to be reduced to 16, as well as all EU citizens resident in the UK to be able to vote as well. Now, it will be interesting to see how those proposals do. Certainly none of the opposition parties, with the exception of Northern Ireland's DUP, should object to them. In fact, they should all be up for them. But that would still need, even if it got that support, which I'll come to in a moment, still need them requiring a dozen or so independent MPs to back the proposals. Now, the main problem as I see it, is, and indeed as many people see it, is that the proposals are likely to take time to implement. And I'm not sure it makes a December election possible. After all, 16 and 17-year-olds can't currently vote. So they're not registered. Like, if you're going to be 18 when the election happens, but you're not now, that's fine. 17-year-olds can register so that even if polling day is on their birthday, they're all set up, they're ready to go to vote on that day. However, for this, you would need 15 and 16-year-olds to be able to register so that they're ready when they reach the age, if that happens on the polling day. And that's systems that are going to need setting up, because 16 and 17-year-olds don't vote on any form of national elections. The EU citizens may be okay because they'll be registered if they wanted to be. For EU elections, I would imagine that would be less of an issue. So maybe that amendment could be supported. Who knows? That'll be interesting. But certainly a Liberal Democrat spokesman was talking about the difficulty in being able to get those people to register by December. So although the party say they're up for electoral reform, it's clear that they are prioritising a December election over this. Now, bear in mind that was a Lib Dem spokesman. That wasn't the leader, and it wasn't the considered opinion. They're not saying that the Liberal Democrats definitely won't support the proposal, just that they seem to be prioritising the date. And justifying a refusal to support something by saying that you can't get it done by a particular date is to prioritise the date of the election over the result. What sort of party doesn't prioritise results in a general election? Yes, it's been quite clear that the leaderships of both the Conservatives and Labour have been buffoons of the highest order over the last few years, but don't imagine that the smaller parties aren't in the same boat. Their dumbassery just isn't on show quite so often due to less exposure. But if Labour have been bounced into this election, and I'm going to agree that if this bill is to be passed anyway, I would feel compelled to support it as Labour leader, then the best course of action is certainly to amend the hell out of it. Even if the amendments fail, it's about making a statement, making a stand. It's a bit like the motion of regret on the NHS last week. Labour will have been the party that have wanted to give all tax-paying citizens the vote. Remember, 16 and 17-year-olds, okay, yes, they can be in full-time education, but they can also be in full-time employment, paying tax. Why shouldn't they be able to vote? EU citizens living in the UK, they're paying tax to the UK Treasury. Why shouldn't they be able to vote? So if the Liberal Democrats oppose those measures, then their credentials as the party of reform for a fairer society unravels a little more. That's to Labour's benefit. But maybe the Lib Dems will support it. Or maybe the House of Lords will put those amendments in themselves if not passed by the Commons. So the way it works is the bill will have its debate and reading today. There'll be a vote today. That's just the first reading. Then there'll be, if it passes, which it's going to because all the party leaders have said they're going to support it, then it'll go to its second reading. Well, then you can have amendments after that. So that's when we'll start to see those amendments coming through. But then there'll be a third reading, all the rest of it. If it passes through all three readings, amended or unamended, then it goes to the House of Lords. They can scrutinise it and suggest amendments themselves. So if the bill comes back from the Lords with amendments attached that either can't be enforced before the end of the year, so if they put in the 16 and 17-year-olds, that can't be enforced, so that sort of stops the December election, or if it comes back with amendments that can be enforced, but all of a sudden one of the party, let's say the Conservatives don't like it, well, then they can vote against it then. So it may be that it's no longer accepted by the Commons. Then that December election won't be happening. So just because all of the major parties are now on board with the December election train, that doesn't mean that the election will be happening in December. We won't even know after the vote later today. So there was no point in me putting off this video until the vote, because that doesn't tell us anything. We know that's going to succeed now. A bill has to be voted on, as I say, 3 times in the Commons, with amendments potentially as well, and then the same treatment in the House of Lords. And there's none of the time limits on the debates in the House of Lords, so it can take, and it does take significantly longer. So don't get me wrong, I think a December election now is more likely than not. I'm not sure that any of the amendments will actually be passed in the Commons or the Lords. And if they are all defeated, then it is definitely a general election just before Christmas. And also, before I finish work and get to go full time, for the love of puppies, seriously. But any of the amendments, which may also include a people's vote on the same day, but I don't really see anyone talking that up, could still sink a 2019 election. And we won't know until sometime next week. So that's the situation as I read it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. Until next time, I'll see you later.